Okay, I want to tell you about two families today. I'll tell you about two families. The first one, the father in that family was a very, very important man. He has special clothes that he wears all the time. This man right here, see, he has a very special outfit on. His name was Eli. And Eli was a high priest in Israel. Some of you have been with us when we talked about the high priest way back when God told the Israelites what the high priest would do. The high priest was the most important religious man in the whole country. He knew the things that God wanted his people to do. And so Eli knew that he could go into the holiest place of all, the Holy of Holies. Do you remember how many times in a year he could go in that place? Do you remember that, Jayla? Do you remember that? And I heard your name last week, but I don't think I've heard it this week, so I've already forgotten. What is your name? Noah. That's right. So, and Noah thinks he knows. Jayla says she remembers. You heard this story? Well, you can help me, but let me tell it, okay? So, and the new kid, he just got his hand up in the air. Well, I'm gonna say it. He could go into the holiest place of all one time in the year, right? So he was the high priest, and that's because his father was the high priest, and his father's father was the high priest. Does anybody remember the name of the very first high priest? I'm sure you don't know the name of the very first high priest. His name was Aaron. Remember Aaron? Moses' brother was the first high priest, and Aaron's son was high priest after him. Well, Eli had two sons. He had two sons. Now, their names are not familiar to us, but I'm going to say them anyway. The name of the one was Hophni, and the other was Phinehas. Hophni and Phinehas was Eli's sons. Now, Eli knew everything that the people of Israel were supposed to do and the way they were supposed to worship him. And so, what do you think Eli should have done with Hophni and Phinehas as they were growing up? Because one day, Hophni or Phinehas would be the high priest, right? Because Eli's father was the high priest, and his father's father was the high priest, and Eli was the high priest now. So one of these days, one of them would be the high priest, right? So what should Eli do with his sons, Hophni and Phinehas? What should he do with them? Max? Huh? Well, you can't talk with your fingers in your mouth. I can't tell what you're saying. Can you tell what he's saying? What do you think Eli should do with his sons? Do what? Play with them? Well, maybe sometimes he would play with them. It's a very important thing that he should do with his sons. We'll give one more person a try. What should he do with his sons?
Make them work.
Make them work? That's true. They should work. You want to? Okay, one more.
Get their heart right with Jesus?
Get their heart right with Jesus? That's probably kind of true. Here, let me just tell you what I'm thinking. Okay? You guys are having a hard time reading what I was thinking. So, he ought to teach his sons, right? He ought to teach them what they should do. If he knows everything about the priesthood and being a priest and living for God, he should teach his sons what they should do. Now, this should be an easier answer. What should Hophni and Phinehas do if Eli is teaching them what to do? What should they do? Okay, so lots more hands. What should they do? What do you think? They should listen. Okay, what else should they do?
Ask questions.
Okay, if they don't understand, they should ask questions. What else should they do?
Learn them how to fight.
Learn how to fight? If they need to learn how to fight, they might need to learn how to fight. I'm sorry?
Look and listen.
Look, listen, ask questions. There's a very important word that starts with an O that they should do. Okay, now that kind of gives it away, but I'm going to let our oldest one, or one of our older ones, what should they do? They should obey, right? They should obey. Eli teaches his sons what to do. Hophni and Phinehas should obey. That's right. Now, and if fathers and mothers teach kids what to do, and kids are supposed to obey, what should happen when kids do not obey? I'm going to say they should get punished, shouldn't they? Okay? The Bible teaches that if you don't obey, you should get punished. Because when you get a little bit of punishment, it reminds you the next time to obey. And then your life will be much happier if you obey your parents. Well, we don't know for sure everything that Eli taught his sons. One of the things that the high priests were told is that when people would bring a sacrifice, part of the sacrifice was for them to eat, because they had to have stuff to eat. Part of the sacrifice was for them to eat. The rest of the sacrifice was for God. And God said that a certain part of the sacrifice was for him first, and then the priest took their part, and the rest was for God. Well, when Hophni and Phinehas were the priests, they were the priests. They weren't the high priests, but they were the priests. People would be bringing their sacrifice to the tabernacle where they were, and Hophni and Phinehas would send a servant out with a great big fork-like tool, and they would say, the servant would say, everything that's on the end of the fork is the priest, and he would jab it into the pot where the meat was cooking and pull it out, and the person that brought the sacrifice would say, well, it's okay for the priest to have his part, but make sure that God has his part first. And the servant of Hophni and Phinehas would say, it doesn't matter what, just everything that's on the end of the fork is ours. And don't boil it. The priests like to have their meat raw. Well, God had said that it had to be cooked. So the Hophni and Phinehas, were they doing what God said? No, they weren't doing what God said. And the people of Israel would be bringing their sacrifice, and they bring their sacrifice to the tabernacle. They want to do what God wanted, and the priests there were doing things bad. They were not obeying God. Eli should have taught them what was right, and if he did, they did not do what was right. Eli didn't stop it. Because Hophni and Phinehas were not doing what was right, what should Eli have done? He should have punished them. That's right. Now, they were grown men. Now, what could he have done? He should have told them that they could not be priests anymore. He should have kicked them out. Other people could have been priests, not them. Even though they were his sons, he should have punished them because they were not doing what God said. But Eli did not do that. He came to his sons and he said, Hophni and Phinehas, I hear the people tell me that you're doing really bad things. You shouldn't be doing that. But he never stopped them. He just told them that they were being bad. Well, one day, God sent a prophet to Eli. And this prophet said, Eli, God is angry with you. He is going to make it so that none of your family are priests anymore. A different family from Aaron will be priests. Because you think of what your sons think of you more than what I think. You regard your sons more than you regard me. You know, a lot of times we do that. We think God says we should do something, but then somebody else, maybe a friend, puts some pressure on us and says, hey, let's do this, and you know you shouldn't do that. But you care more about what your friend says than about what God says. And that's not right. God's not happy with that. And the prophet said to Eli, because you care more about your boys, what they think, than what I think, your family will not be priests. I'm going to have someone else be priests, and Hophni and Phinehas are going to die in the very same day. They're going to be punished. Well, so that's one family, the family of Eli. Eli was a father. He had sons. Was he a good father? No. Because if he did teach his boys, he didn't make them obey, did he? And parents, the Bible teaches us that parents should teach their kids and they should make their children obey. If their children don't obey, they should be there's another man in Israel, this man here, and his name is a lot harder to remember than Eli. His name was Elkanah, or Elkanah. I'm going to call him Elkanah. That's easier for me to say. So Elkanah, he was another man in Israel, and we don't really know his name very much. He was not a priest. He was not a very important man, but he loved God and he worshiped God the way he should. In fact, every single year he would bring his family to, I'm showing the picture a little too early, but Elkanah would bring his family to the tabernacle, and they would have sacrifices, and he would, and as part of, remember, okay, God would get a part, I don't think I said it this way, but God would get a part of the sacrifice, the priest would get a part of the sacrifice, and the people who brought the sacrifice would eat and fellowship with that sacrifice in the tabernacle. So, when it came time for Elkanah to do his sacrifices, he would give a portion to all of his family, including his wife, whose name was Hannah. Now, some of you might know somebody, a girl with the name of Hannah, and they're probably named after,
That's my sister.
well, the very first Hannah that people would have wanted to name their children after was this Hannah. But Hannah had no children. She had no children. And so when it came time to feast, she was not happy because she really wanted to have a child. And she would just cry because she didn't have any children. And then finally, she just let everyone else be. And she went off and she went into the tabernacle, and she was along the edge of the tabernacle. And she was crying, and she was praying, and she prayed to God, and she said, God, if you will give me a son, I will give him back to serve you for his whole life. So what did she do? She's praying, and when she's praying, she asked God for a son, didn't she? Okay? Well, Eli, the high priest, he was a little confused, but he came over and talked to her, and by the time he finished talking to her, he said, the Lord will give you what you have asked of him. Eli didn't even know what she asked. But he said, the Lord will give you what you have asked of him. And Hannah thought, well, the high priest has said it, and I believe it. I think that's going to happen. So she went back, and she was happy, and she ate her food, and she went back home with her husband, Elkanah. And you know what? Within about a year, Hannah had a baby boy. And she called his name Samuel. How many of you know somebody named Samuel? There's a lot of Samuels around. In fact, our verse comes from a book called Samuel, doesn't it? Okay. Well, Samuel, in the old times, when people named their children, many times the name meant something. And the name Samuel means asked of God. Why would Hannah have called her son asked of God? Destiny? Because she asked God for him. That's right. She was in the tabernacle praying. She asked God for him, and God gave her a son. And Samuel grew and grew, and every year when Elkanah and his family, the rest of his family, would go to the tabernacle, Hannah would not go to the tabernacle. Because, do you remember when she asked God for a son, what she said? She asked, and she also promised something. Remember what she promised? She said, if you give me a son, what? Sheila? She would give her son to the Lord. And so, Hannah wanted to rear her son until he was old enough, and whenever she was not going to go back to the tabernacle until she could bring Samuel with her, and Samuel had to be old enough to leave at the tabernacle, because she had promised God that she would give her son to the Lord. And this is a picture showing that. Elkanah with Hannah and little Samuel. And they brought Samuel to the tabernacle and brought him to Eli. And Hannah said, you might not remember me, but I'm the lady that you said the Lord has given you what you asked for, and here is my son. I asked a son, and God gave me Samuel, and I am bringing him back and giving him back to the Lord. And he can serve you here, serve the Lord here in the tabernacle for all of his life. So little Samuel stayed there. That might have been scary. Do you think Hannah just thought, oh, it's just easy, I'll just leave my son there? No, she dearly loved Samuel. He was her only son. But she promised God, and she was not going to back out of her promise, was she? So she left Samuel there, and I can imagine that as they left, Elkanah and Hannah said to Samuel, "You be a good boy. You learn everything that Eli teaches you. You make sure you listen and obey, and we will come back every year, and I will bring you a new coat every year." Because why would Samuel need a new coat? Because he'd be growing taller and taller. I mean, if you tried to wear the clothes that you wore when you're 6 years old, when you're 8 years old, it'd be too short, wouldn't it? So she's going to bring him a new coat every year. And so year after year, Samuel stayed there in the tabernacle and learned the things that they did there. He helped. He did whatever he was told. He obeyed. And he grew. And maybe probably about the time he was 12 or so, we think, he was sleeping one night. And all of a sudden, he heard somebody say, "Samuel! Samuel!" And so what do you think he did? He got up and he ran to Eli. Because Eli was the guy in charge. He said, "Eli, what do you need?" And he had to wake Eli up, which was kind of odd. He said, "Eli, what do you need? You called my name." And Eli said, "I didn't call your name, son. Maybe you were dreaming. Go ahead and go back to bed." And so Samuel went back to bed, and he was laying there, and all of a sudden he heard a voice. He said, "Samuel! Samuel!" And he went to Eli and said, "You called my name. What do you need?" Eli said, I didn't call your name. Go on back to bed." So Samuel went back, and he's laying there and sleeping. All of a sudden he hears his voice, "Samuel!" I know I heard Eli call my name. I mean, he ran to Eli. And finally, Eli said, he's hearing the voice. I think he's hearing the voice of God. God is calling Samuel. So he said to Samuel, "It's not me. I think it's God. So the next time you hear the voice, just sit up and say, 'Speak, Lord, for thy servant heareth.'" Samuel went back to bed. He's laying there, and all of a sudden, what do you think he heard? "Samuel! Samuel!" Samuel got up and said, "Speak, for thy servant hears." And then God told Samuel, God talked to Samuel. It was God that had been calling him. God doesn't do that to us today because we have the whole Bible. Oh, it's not up there. We have the whole Bible to know what God wants us to say. But Samuel didn't have the whole Bible. There was very little of the Bible that we have when Samuel was a boy. God called Samuel and talked to him and said, "Samuel," and he told him certain things. He told him how Eli had not been a faithful, obedient priest. He told him how Eli's family had not done what they should do, and that he was going to punish their family. And all of those things. So then Samuel went back to bed, and the next morning, Eli asked him, "So, Samuel, what did God tell you?" I think Samuel wanted to tell him those things that God had told him. No, that would have been kind of scary to say, "Well, God told me that you are not being a good man. God told me that your kids, your sons are evil and that they're going to die." But Samuel told him the truth, told Eli the truth. And Eli said, "The thing that God has said is true." He knew it. The prophet before, remember, had told him. And now God had told Samuel, and Eli knew. And you know what happened? A few years later, Hophni and Phinehas were in battle. They were carrying the Ark of the Covenant. And the Philistines killed them both. And they died in the same day, just like God had said. And when news came back to the tabernacle, where their dad was sitting, waiting, and he heard that the Ark of the Covenant had been taken by the Philistines, he fell backwards on his chair and broke his neck, and he died too. Just like God had said. So in the same day, Eli died and his two sons died. So who had to be priest? I don't think it was Samuel, because he was probably still young. But it was a different family. It was a different son of Aaron. It was no longer a priest from Eli's family, just like God had said. Now, today, we have learned about two families. right? The family of Eli and the family of Elkanah. And our lessons are going to be about disobedience. Which family was disobedient? Which father was really disobedient? Well, actually the father and the boys. Which one was disobedient? Eli's family. And what were his sons' names who were disobedient? Those are harder. Do you remember their names? One of them? Phineas was one. Remember the other one? Hophni. That's a weird name. But Hophni and Phineas, they were disobedient. And which family, what was the good family? What was the obedient family? Elkanah. And what was Elkanah and Hannah's son's name? Everyone? Samuel. That's right. And so, here, our verse doesn't really talk about disobedience. It says, only fear the Lord and serve Him in truth with all your heart. So, it's telling us something to do. If we're disobedient to that, are we going to have a good life? Are we going to have good things happen to us if we disobey this verse? No. We don't want to disobey. We want to obey this verse. We want to fear the Lord. We want to serve the Lord in truth with all of our heart. If we do that, we will have a happy life. You are children. You'll be happier if you obey your parents, right? Someday you're going to be parents. You're going to be happier if you obey God and teach your children to do what's right. If you don't teach your children to do what's right, they're going to have a miserable life. They might even die, all of them in the same day, just like Hophni and Phineas. Now, do you think that was happy for Eli to have his sons die in the same day? No. But it happened because he didn't make his kids do what's right. He cared more about what his kids thought than what God thought, right? So we need to make sure that we care more about what God thinks. It's more important to fear the Lord and serve Him than what anyone else thinks, right? We should remember that in our own lives. We should obey our parents because God says to obey our parents. When we grow older, we should make our kids do what's right because God says that that's what our responsibility as parents. We shouldn't care if they don't like it or not. We should want them to do what's right and obey God. All right.